Never in a million years did I think I'd live to see a day where I uploaded Call of Duty gameplay on this channel, but somehow, someway, COD Black Ops 6 has ended up being closer to a heisting simulator than I ever thought imaginable. You see, I have a thesis. When Payday 3 went and stole all of COD's generic military sim menus, basic ass stat bars and movement options, the Treyarch devs took it personally and decided to completely corner the market on some of Payday's best material. Building its campaign, pulling off assassinations, sweet-talking dopey security guards, and robbing the finest damn casino I've ever had the pleasure of bearing witness to. It's no exaggeration to say Black Ops 6 is soaked in heisting game DNA, to the point it had me questioning what bloody franchise I was playing. So it has provided the perfect opportunity to kick off my brand new series. Games that are kinda like Payday but legally distinct from Payday to prevent the ghost of Bo Anderson haunting their office, or something along those lines. It's still a work in progress title. In other words, I'll be playing a bunch of Payday-Likes you may or may not have heard of, recounting my experience with the game and reviewing what it does well or not so well along the way. Absolutely not derivative of a series already on YouTube whatsoever. Completely original, 100%. Also, Payday-Like is such a loosely defined term, seeing as pretty much it's just me using it, that yes, I can start off with a massive reach like COD Black Ops 6. Sod it, I make the rules here, and I've got to give my ludicrous COD x Payday conspiracy theories a platform somehow. For God's sake, we steal cash, they just added Ransack to multiplayer, which is literally a better Payday PvP mode than Crime War, and there's even a vault in zombies. So, if you're not enjoying Payday 3 at the moment and want something to scratch that thematic itch, sit back, relax, and enjoy Call of Duty Heist Ops 6 Ocean's 11 Edition. In its defense, the campaign starts off with the driest, most on-rails experience it could possibly offer to lull you into a false sense of security that this will be like any other Call of Duty you've played. Bishop Takes Ruck opens with a little character montage mixing together historic broadcasts and sufficiently redacted documents to kick things off the Black Ops way, setting the scene around the early 90s Gulf War as we jump back and forth between a heated debrief taking place in the present with the Deputy Director of the CIA Daniel Livingston and the botched mission we're discussing out in Q8. A compelling enough intro, but not the heisting fantasy I've been selling you. We're witnessing these events through the eyes of one William Case Calderon, the primary first-person perspective in Black Ops 6 and specialist in getting intentionally captured and pistol-whipped. Currently, we're searching through the remains of an intercepted convoy, seeking out Saddam's Minister of Defense, Saeed Alawi, slip-sliding around thanks to the advent of Omni-movement. Once we found him, Troy Marshall, all-around stereotypically naive good guy, tells Alawi a blatant lie.
Stay calm, we're not here to hurt you.
Before we regroup for the on-rails runback, this time pitted against the shady western faction of this game, Pantheon. I'm positive they're just pulling sufficiently badass mythologically adjacent names out of a hat at this point. The best part of the return journey is the RCXD racing, which is now integrated into a full-on equipment backpack and comes with complimentary slow-mo. Whilst a little more involved than most COD tutorials of old, this is still a fairly truncated mission, especially when you realise just how bloody strong that equipment can be. The curveball is the return of Cold War's Russell Adler, keeping up the tradition of inexplicably shooting people in the face, as Jane Harrow, the third member of this recovery operation, sounds mildly disappointed. Adler's pleased with himself, and the crew are livid as they're under the impression he's why Frank Woods is one colleague, one friend, and 2 kneecaps short of a full set right now. Troy gets over it pretty quickly though, bragging about his driving skills, when all he did was floor it to avoid the chopper we just shot out the sky. Now, if that ain't a classic, I know what I'm in for Call of Duty intro, I don't know what is. All action, some corny dialogue here and there, and Woods, who's also here apparently, but only gets to regenerate his kneecaps in multiplayer, slowly turning into the grouchy old man we see in Black Ops 2, and refusing to share the meaning behind Adler's statement, Bishop takes Ruck, just before handing himself over. The long and short of it is Case, Marshall, and Woods are suspended, Harrow's under desk arrest, and we get a little insight into Harrow and Marshall potentially being old flames back in the day. Of course, Adler and Woods weren't just continuing a decades-long chess game from that coded statement. Woods never believed it was Adler who'd set him up back in Panama, and also knew that codename Rug was an old KGB safehouse out in Bulgaria, so the boys made the trip over a few days later, seemingly in self-driving cars. Here's where the real heisting crew roleplay gets started, as Woods asks about our personal finances and requests we start stealing from the rich to build up the facilities around here, as well as invest in our own training. This isn't my first playthrough, so all the training, gear and weapon stations are already built, and I'm halfway to being a super soldier already, although for those of you experiencing this for the first time, these light RPG mechanics work really effectively, allowing you to specialise in certain weapon or equipment types and buff your own base stats. In fact, if you're taking on veteran difficulty, it's a downright godsend, giving you plenty of reasons to explore when out on missions and get a steady flow of cash coming in. I recommend most of the perks in the gear station focused around armor plates and equipment, as these are some of the most important tools you'll have at your disposal. Especially later into the campaign, Elite Assassin is downright overpowered, allowing you to trivialize elite spawns and fully heal after doing so. The rest of the Safehouse is also fairly impressive, not just visually but also in terms of its world building, evolving over the course of the campaign as the rogue Black Ops crew expands, giving a little insight into the personalities and backstories of your team for those who want to seek that info out. See Starbreeze, if even COD's doing it right, what's your excuse? I'm also compelled to mention one more slightly convoluted secret within the Rock on a similar level to the Cold War cipher puzzles. As any Payday 2 lovers out there should already know, when the piano's involved in an Easter egg, shit's about to get real. Whilst it's already solved on this account, by heading over to a fresh save we can decode the KGB secrets once more, using a black light to expose Russian letters hidden around the living room which correspond to others next to certain keys, making for an easy initial solve. By heading down to the basement, you can follow a set of instructions to refire a power generator without it overheating, which will then grant you access to a hidden underground bunker. Here you just need to follow the paths until you reach dead ends, completing simple mini-games you'll find throughout the campaign to access an interrogation room where a key to the final step is located. In this suburban mock-up, you have to tune a radio and listen to your own individually tailored riddle, which is simply a set of instructions for a hidden numerical code, inputting the numbers in close proximity to the items mentioned by the voice into the safe in Adler's room in order to open it up for a fairly significant stimulus package to kickstart the campaign. I'll admit I was expecting something even more secretive, akin to the zombies Easter eggs, but this was enough intrigue to remind me that this ain't your grandpappy's Call of Duty. The Rock is also home to another stellar feature of Black Ops 6 as it expands upon Cold War's limited attempts at dialogue trees, with each instance of the Safehouse between missions having its own fixed conversation setups, complete with cutscene level facial animations. These can be a bit clunky to work your way through across the entire campaign, hence why doing so is an actual challenge, but the dialogue itself is generally impeccably well written and genuinely compelling, allowing you to expose yourself to as much exposition as your TikTok-addled brain can handle. Don't expect Fallout New Vegas level writing and conversation options, but I must confess, I forgot I was playing Call of Duty at times within the Safehouse, as I'm not used to getting invested in characters within this franchise outside of their heroics within cutscenes. A great change of pace. Thanks to this development, we can learn that Marshall's heading over to Munich to recruit Felix Newman, an ex-Stasi tech whiz and heavy who should be happy to join the crew as he hates the CIA. Whilst we're off to Avalon, which is a dead ringer for real-world Monaco, to follow up on the only lead Adler left us with, seeking out Savati Dumas for intel on the Pantheon, and to secure another potential ally. Blood Feud is where this campaign really kicks off in my eyes, an assassination mission which does away with the linear Michael Bay movie Call of Duty once was, in favour of a thought-out romp through Lowtown. We're after Yannick, whose main crime appears to be mogging too hard in photos, and with whom Savati has a personal grudge. We can snipe him out of his yacht, but only if we climb up to a bell tower on top of a church, guarded by underlings from the crime syndicate known as the Guild. This is much more of a tutorial than Bishop Takes Ruck was, giving us complete freedom of how to approach the trip over to the church, but clearly setting up a few guards to be fall guys, placed beside the canal for easy body disposal. Sneaking around this place already, stealth should be familiar, with a basic detection bar, AI that will detect sound, movement and irregularities, as well as the tried and true stealth classic of a lockpicking minigame, which is somehow even more straightforward than it is in Skyrim. The melee takedowns are bone-crushingly brutal and the Noisemaker Trank Mine is incredibly easy to abuse, but even so I found myself enjoying this basic stealth system that encourages a little creativity if you want to clear a path forward completely. The level design is also solid, allowing you to flank and take cover as well as climb up to avoid entering the church from the front. Even better, once inside we can explore more of the church itself, which is currently housing Pantheon's down payment for the Guild's services and our first opportunity for a bit of good old-fashioned thievery. You really are rewarded for exploring and not just following the objective marker, and maybe I'm being condescending here, but that's just not something I'd expect from the franchise I've been playing for 18 years. Anyway, that's enough glazing for the time being. It's time to go from Payday to Hitman to a little Sniper Elite as we dome Yannick right between the eyes before just scything through the guild's muscle to meet up with Sev and drive to their main base of operations. Here we get another little touch of heisting magic in the form of pre-planning, giving us multiple options for entry depending on the approach we favour. Whilst guard placement is always going to be the same across all difficulties, this does add a fair bit of replayability to what was always such a one and done campaign in the past. Of course, the Payday blood running through my veins compels me to take the side vent access, ruining this guy's bathroom break, and of course, taking a look around for cash. In addition to the loose valuables, there's also a safe in this room which comes pre-cracked thanks to me opening it up on my first playthrough. This is actually a recurring side objective you can find on almost every mission in the game. You need to listen out for radio static and complete a simple little frequency alignment minigame which will tell you what the numbers mean, granting you access to the nearby safe. It's all fairly rudimentary, but I still appreciate the treasure hunt from time to time, and the big 1k reward is a nice sweetener. Back to the mission at hand, you can really do some impressive stealth maneuvers once you get the hang of the noisemaker trank and throwing knife, allowing you to clear out the cartel quietly without needing to worry about any pages or radios. Hell, you can just go in loud and make a mess the old-fashioned way if you want to. Not for the first or last time, the plan involves Case losing a few teeth to the butt of a gun before we turn the tables on the guild with some classic COD slow-mo. My number one objective at this stage is to pick up the killing blow on Sagir with a throwing knife before Asadi barbecues himself in his own limo, enough to convince Sev to join the crew at the Safehouse and confirm that the CIA is tied to Pantheon in some way, seeing as they recognised Case, even a few teeth short. Back at the Ruck, once Marshall had got his textures back and self-proclaimed pacifist Felix Newman arrived to fiddle with my camera to give it that patented Far Cry wallhack technology, it was time to commence heist number 2, Adler Breakout. We wouldn't be breaking into a courthouse, but instead a CIA black site located under Capitol Station. Something about this taking place in DC just feels right to me. This time we're going in casing mode. Apparently, the guys at Raven didn't fancy giving us the opportunity to twist history and pull out a pistol on Governor Bill Clinton pre-presidency. What it does set us up for is another array of branching optional objectives, with Sev presenting 3 potential plans of action from her earlier scouting endeavours to get us up close and personal with Senator McKenna in order to snap a picture of his iris and gain access to the black site. Once again, player choice in a COD campaign, they said it couldn't be done, but our options are to ruin his marriage, attempt some corporate blackmail, or just hire a fixer to pull him aside and give him the treatment. Naturally, I went with the fixer on this playthrough, but each of the branching paths are genuinely interesting from a narrative perspective, although it's hard to believe one man could cock up so momentously that like a good 50% of event attendees want to either blackmail him or break his kneecaps, although for the purpose of our mission, that just means a lot of opportunity. Our chosen approach means a quiet chat with Maidman Armato, who wants us to sneak into the blind auction to find what McKenna's spending big on, first locating the item by hacking into a PC system via what has to be the most inane of the Black Ops 6 minigames, where you just have to match numbers and letters to spell out words. Most of the time these words are obvious, so I play my own minigame where I try and guess the full word with as few number clues as possible. That's either a reflection of how sad I am, or how rubbish this particular hacking cycle is. Anyway, we don't have to be committed pacifists during this section of the mission, still punching throats whenever possible behind the curtain. The item we're after is inside this antique clock, which is locked behind yet another minigame. This one is Number Wordle, as you use a black light to make out greasy fingerprints that correspond to the correct numbers for a code. We just then have to decrypt their correct placement, which is far less heinously boring than the hacking game. The prize is a 3D printout of the Microsoft Save icon, which Amato seems happy to receive, so happy he goes and gets the senators to celebrate in a bar out back, giving us the perfect photo op to complete this section of the mission. Honestly, no matter what option you pick, it doesn't go great for McKenna. It's actually quite telling that exposing his affair to his wife is comfortably the best outcome he can receive, as the coat rack option leads to a similar level of brutality, just at our hands instead. Also, his man gets the chip fryer treatment, which is surely the worst way to go we've seen on display so far. That said, the covert section of the mission isn't over just yet, as we need to slip past rooftop guards without being seen in order to access a lift shaft leading below the building. After some poor guard for hire gets the gunbutt treatment for once, we're good to head below, using the camera to access the underground bunker, which has already been Pantheoned. Again, the choice is yours, keep it quiet or make a mess of them. I'd suggest the sneaky approach if you're taking this on either hardened or veteran, with more branching paths to make your way across the main office unseen. Doing so is also a Dark Ops challenge, in case you're wondering. Operation Adler Breakout is delivered by the world's sneakiest RCXD, blasting the Vault power box for max confusion and interrupting his interrogation. Stealth is understandably out of the question at this point as we're forced to battle back to the entrance, facing down Pantheon's version of the taser. On the plus side, we're absolutely locked and loaded with equipment, including the entirely overpowered adrenaline stim, which is like Jet in Fallout 4, giving us superhuman reflexes which can seriously trivialize veteran if you're having a tough time with it. Next to be introduced is the minigun bulldozer unit, which could be scary to face down, were they not complete idiots who are happy to walk directly into your C4. Also, melee is not off the table when taking these guys on, although I'd love to know why either Marshall or Adler decided to throw a frag at me. On the run back, the C4 did the job in its entirety, leading to the contractually mandated Call of Duty elevator shaft explosion and our first QTE event, which they've also inexplicably snuck into this game. Next up on the Pantheon Payday Gauntlet is the Techie, except this guy just likes playing with explosive cars and isn't normally much of a threat. Back up on the surface, Stims absolutely trivialise this ambush, meaning all that's left is the Biker Heist 2.0, as we steal a couple of Harleys to leap the police blockade and drag Adler back to the Safehouse. This brings us on to yet another curveball of a mission, as instead of heisting sim, it becomes some sort of covert Metal Gear Solid mission out in Iraq. We're helping the SAS clear out militants in the desert on a promise that they won't blast one of Saddam's palaces to Kingdom Come until we've had the chance to search it for Pantheon activity. We're given our home base, an expansive arid desert to explore a map filled with objectives on all sides. Vehicles are an absolute must on this mission, allowing us to drive from one PoE to the next, whilst getting a little blood on the tyres in the process. By all means, you can just head straight to the 3 anti-air scud loaders to move on to the next stage of the mission in under 10 minutes, but especially on harder difficulties, this will leave you missing out on key resources for when you storm the palace. So naturally, the completionist in me was driving from one objective marker to the next, clearing it all out methodically. How you do so is completely up to you, and your options will expand as you explore. Maybe you'll come across a silent sniper, making it easy for you to pick off Pantheon camps from afar, or an RCXD which you can detonate remotely for an effective ambush. Or hell, maybe you just want a beeline to the mortar strike or stealth bomber to drop death from above. I'm genuinely impressed by the options and found myself changing up tactics on the fly, especially during my veteran playthrough. For me, the most rewarding approach is almost always stealth, allowing me to really hone my skills. By no means is the enemy AI fantastic, but it's still challenging and satisfying enough to weave your way through them with all the tools at your disposal. If you're paying attention, you'll also get the chance to hear crucial bits of lore around Pantheon's inception and objectives on this mission. Once you've taken enough SAM turrets offline, the real fun can begin as the chopper gunner becomes yours to abuse, meaning the final scud site was less all gillied up, more so an all-out slaughter using all the resources I'd gathered across the rest of the mission. This was a sign of what was to come at the palace, as we still have access to air support, making this assault a walk in the park, as we're introduced to another bootleg Payday enemy in the war crime slinging Grenadier, another elite who is just a source of full armour once you unlock the right skills at base camp. The heister in me has to be disappointed we're not stealing the golden toilet, an opportunity the Payday gang would not pass up, but apparently this bioweapon known as the Cradle is more important to us soldier boys. Heading back up with surprisingly empty pockets to help the SAS clear the roof for pickup, just in time to nearly get my head chopped off by the propeller. The next mission is Emergence, taking us to the American facility responsible for producing this Cradle bioweapon, which brings back all sorts of memories for Case, even giving us some insight into where he might have got that codename. I'm at pains not to spoil this one because it's truly one of the most atmospheric and unique missions in the entire franchise's history, up there with the likes of Vendetta, Vorkuta, and Suffer With Me in terms of how I'll remember it. Trust me, go into this one knowing as little as possible, you should love every minute of it, but that isn't the focus of this video. Instead, up next we have the mission that convinced me to make this in the first place. Up until now, Black Ops 6, whilst a fleshed out take on the formula, was still unmistakably just that. A COD campaign with some cash-seeking side objectives, branching paths, one experimental open-world mission, and a very rudimentary RPG system. But with high rollers, we get something completely different. A proper heist. Quick catch up on the plot after we skipped over Emergence. Another floppy disk found in Saddam's vault contained video footage of the Cradle at work, turning those in contact with it feral, and worst of all, it was transmittable. To make matters even more dire, in what was a relatively well-disguised twist, Jane Harrow, remember her from Mission 1, appears to be the mole within the CIA, disrupting them in the name of Pantheon. Loverboy Marshall is understandably pissed, but like any good twist, the signs were there if you paid attention. Her frustration when Marshall orders us to evade Pantheon in the prologue, her appearance speaking to two mystery men just before Pantheon hit the black site, and her clear desire to keep the team's suspicions towards Livingston alive and well. Anyway, from breaking down the audio in this video, Newman's able to isolate a few key terms. Fuina, which is the codename of a casino back in swanky Avalon, and B-24, a safe deposit box deep within its vaults. The perfect setup for a little casino heist. And let me tell you, everything about this is exactly how you draw up an Ocean's 11 homage within Call of Duty. The freedom of approach isn't there this time, unfortunately, but in exchange, this is a damn tight mission with a logical thread running throughout that heist enthusiasts will love. All tied together by, you guessed it, Case allowing himself to get intentionally captured again, the poor bastard. This is also the first mission in the game that really makes use of all the crewmates we've gathered, allowing us to step into the first-person perspective of 4 of the main team members, whilst Woods conducts the handler role. We start off as Marshall, taking in what has to be the most graphically impressive level in a video game, at least in terms of fidelity, I have ever played. Honestly, this casino makes the Golden Grin from Payday 2 look like a Ladbrokes. Marshall's whole objective, outside of gawping at this ornate ceiling, is to meet up with Savati, who's already undercover as a bar attendant within the casino, to pick up some sleeve aces before stepping into a high-roller game of poker with this generically obnoxious European bloke. Marshall's pretty crap at Hold'em sadly though, so he just needs to hold the fort and build up his opponent's confidence for long enough so that Case can attach a device to intercept the camera feeds back to Woods and give Marshall yet another edge. This section is fairly claustrophobic, but with all the tools at your disposal, including a suppressed shotgun for classic ragdoll body hiding launches, it's a fun stealth gauntlet through the sewers, as Case simply hands himself over to the Lutazzi guards for his customary beating to get within their inner sanctum for the planned escape. Back with Marshall, the camera advantage saves him from his opponent getting a lucky straight out of the river, as we can upgrade his hand to a full house when everyone's distracted by Sev. This gives us the High Roller Lounge Pass, which we then use to set all slot machines into payout overdrive, giving Felix, disguised as a repairman, full reign to head into the server rooms undetected. I've got to say, one missed opportunity here has to be that these slots are unplayable. With us actually having a currency to collect, it's a shame they don't let us do a little gambling on the side. Probably makes sense when our main objective involves avoiding a potentially cataclysmic bioweapon attack, but you know, we all have our vices. Speaking of vices, Newman's whole thing is about turning away from violence, so I did my best to roleplay that mindset until I found out you automatically fail this section of the mission if you get compromised, doing so enough times that I snapped, and so did this poor bloke's neck. Sorry Felix, your pacifist days are done, but now we have a copy of a keycard that can give us access to the casino vault. Picking up with our 4th playable character of this mission, now it's Sev's time to break some backs and open a path down via the lift for Marshall and Newman to join her. Arming up at their own armory, I kept it understated with just pistols for an additional challenge, before Felix made me feel a hell of a lot less guilty about what I'd done earlier in the heist. This crew doesn't really care for the all-stealth bonus, so went in with a tried and true thermite and C4 combo to blast the door open so Felix can unlock access to the archive room once Case gets free. Not really bothering with my pistols, this is a great opportunity to showcase some of the utterly overpowered equipment options we get access to during this campaign. The homing knife, for example, which can be charged up and remotely controlled, is damn good at crowd control, making for a really simple holdout. Back with Case in the driving seat, he's enjoying his favourite pastime of being interrogated, whilst using his slippery skill to escape the handcuffs and get his revenge. Joining the other 3 right as the path deposit box B-24 opens up, grabbing a dossier and joining back with the crew. Juiced to the gills with stims, we backtrack to the basement entrance as they introduce, you guessed it, another Payday classic, the shield units, whose primary weakness is either electricity or getting curb stomped by their own shields. Pick your poison. Heading back down to the sewers Case started in, this is sadly not an escape fueled by guile or a bus driving through the wall, as Call of Duty can't help but show its roots from time to time, simply needing to jump on a boat to escape through the Avalon waterways. Regardless, this is a top tier heist mission any game would be proud of, and I really enjoyed the logic and pre-planning to each of the steps. It's just a damn shame we only got away with a few $100s. The real prize though, as ever, is information, as we now have intel on Gustev, the man responsible for developing the Cradle in recent years, and his supposed hideout in Iraq. Sadly, although Adler was just around the corner from that postcode, the lab was already abandoned, so now we have to cut the customary post-heist beers short for a classic boots-on-the-ground COD mission over in the war zone that is Q8 alongside Cold War favourite sims. It's a fine mission but doesn't really fit into the heist vibe this video is going for, so I'm going to give you the abridged version. Adler's a cold bastard, Sims is now by the books, and these incendiary shotgun specials need to be congratulated not only for not being carbon copies of Payday units, but also for how impressively demolished they get in these brutal takedown animations. We end up chasing Gustav all over the airport in this cat and mouse sequence with little homages to the likes of Mile High Club before jumping into an Iraqi tank to flatten even the heavies and intercept Gustav's plane before it takes off. Somehow, he survives this, to give Case an opportunity to finally see the other side of an interrogation scene, holding the rogue scientist over the spluttering plane engine long enough to find out we'll be heading back to Vorkuta for another iconic Black Ops nostalgia fest as we seek to intercept the cradle right under Pantheon's nose. Once again, this is a phenomenal setup, and the execution is spot on too, as we step into the boots of apparent disguise specialist Savati over in Siberia to take on the role of a Pantheon guard. This is casing mode version 2, as not only can we move freely around most areas of the base, we're free to pull out weapons and dispose of unfortunate guards whenever they get in our way. This time we have 3 core objectives: sabotage the radar system, SAM system, and attack helo. Once again, our methods to do so are truly diverse. You can keep it simple by just going and planting explosives, but that's going to require some serious stealth abilities. Or you can explore and make use of the environment to sabotage the machines, seeking out things like bottled water to freeze the fueling pipes of the chopper. That's not all though, you can even just talk your way into completing these objectives using your impressive powers of observation to convince idiot operators around the base to sabotage themselves. It's a little on the nose with how it delivers the right dialogue to you, and I wish we had to listen out for more subtle clues or overhear conversations, but it certainly serves a purpose. But I also have to wonder, as literally the only woman we've ever seen within Pantheon other than its leader Harrow, how these lads aren't at least a little more suspicious of us. But hey, we can smooth talk them into shutting down half their systems to leave the Vorkuta base wide open for our own chopper gunner flyover. This is actually a casing mode mechanic I wonder if Payday can learn from, giving us the chance to occasionally communicate with NPCs in relevant situations. Anyway, whilst messing with their core base defences, you can also seek out additional explosives to rig the other vehicles around the base to blow, making things even more chaotic when all hell breaks loose, which it does shortly after we locate Harrow down in the testing labs, giving orders and confirming that the weapon has already shipped. Making the best of a bad situation, the guys instead decide to go after Harrow herself, who's way too confident for someone who clearly hasn't witnessed just how disgustingly powerful the homing, exploding knife can be, trivialising this section of the game, but not before Case got himself held up at gunpoint once more, only tanking 1 hit this time, which is probably considered a win in his books, whilst also learning a little more about why he keeps hearing voices, assumedly the result of all the head trauma he keeps signing himself up for. Back at the Rook, if you've played Cold War, you'll know that Adler's usual response to any adverse situation is to absolutely load someone up with experimental drugs, which is exactly what we do with Harrow, right as we realise she has a tracker in her arm and half a Pantheon are now on their way to Belarus for a little Safehouse raid. So whilst Marshall and Woods play good cop bad cop with her fractured drug-addled psyche, the rest of the team head outside to set up defences and hold down the Rook. From a gameplay perspective, this means you're going to get whiplash, being tossed from surreal puzzle sections as a child in Vorkuta, all the way back to a heavily armoured holdout at the Safehouse you've grown to know and love, reminiscent of that quickly abandoned survival Spec Ops mode from Modern Warfare 3. However, the actual story being told in the background here is really compelling, as you're left genuinely curious as to the events that led Harrow down this darker, CIA-hating path and splintered her personality. I don't think I should really spoil much more of these sections when you play as Harrow, as they are really engaging the first time through and escalate as you get closer and closer to the truth around why and what she's doing. The target, we find out, is Washington, so with Livingston alerted, all the rogue Black Ops now need to do is stay alive and keep Harrow in their custody, which Woods almost fails on both accounts as he isn't half the operative he once was. This leaves you, as Case, to chase her down and perform some helicopter acrobatics before finally taking out all that pent-up frustration at being the fall guy out on Harrow's face. Sadly, this is where we, as the player, lose control at the end of the Black Ops 6 campaign. We don't get much of a resolution. Case's fate is left somewhat ambiguous as they were going down in a sinking helicopter, but if I've learned anything from Modern Warfare, if you don't see someone explicitly die, it doesn't matter how screwed they look, they'll probably be completely uninjured. As for the rest of the rogue Black Ops, they're right where Livingston wants them, able to operate from the shadows with an even deeper layer of probable deniability for the US government when Adler goes out committing war crimes. so this new status quo seems to be holding in place for any future installments. Of course, Pantheon have to still be around, especially with so many unanswered questions about Case, so they end the campaign by dropping an absolute clanger on us, with this random bloke from the very first cutscene popping up like we're meant to know who the hell he is and why we should care. Not my ideal end to what was a really gripping narrative, although I assume many of these loose threads will be picked up across seasonal cutscenes, which leaves me feeling fairly empty as I've got deep distrust issues with live services as of late. Regardless of all that, this is still a 9 out of 10 campaign for me. The pacing, mission variety, dialogue and gameplay innovations really worked in my opinion, and that focus on stealth and exploration, which runs so counter to what this franchise used to be about, appeals massively, especially as a lover of the heisting genre, which we all know this game loves to dip its toes into. If you're here watching this as a fan of the Payday series, I can't recommend you give it a go enough, especially when it's so accessible on Game Pass, and then you also have the fleshed out zombies mode to try out if you want a horde style shooter to take up your attention with the end times apparently coming to our beloved franchise. With that in mind, I need more ideas for Payday-Likes to cover. Killing Floor, Deep Rock Galactic, and of course the original inspiration for Payday, Left 4 Dead all spring to mind, but let me know if there are any other more obscure games I should be checking out, and which elements of these games you'd like me to explore, review, and contrast as the series moves forward. This video was a blast to make. Let me know what you thought, and if you could, drop a like on the video to give it that bit more reach outside of the usual circles. Thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.